All right, in this video, we're going to talk about models of ethical behavior. We're going to talk about outcome-based ethics. So let's give you a quick background about what outcome-based ethics are. So outcome-based ethics were most famously espoused by Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. And this line of ethical thought is often called utilitarianism. So the goal of outcome-based ethics is to provide the most good to the greatest number of people and the least harm to the fewest number of people. Now, there are obviously some advantages to this line of ethical reasoning. And the biggest being is that outcome-based ethics are really focused on the goals of maximizing happiness and minimizing suffering, which I think most people agree is a pretty worthwhile goal. That said, let me present a cautionary tale related to outcome-based ethics. So, September 1970, the first Ford Pinto rolls off the assembly line. And it was a pretty successful car. Over 500,000 Pintos were sold each year. That was just one pretty significant problem. The Ford Pinto would burst into flames if rear-ended at 25 miles per hour or more. Now, a fix would cost about $11 per car in the production, but it would also cost probably hundreds of millions of dollars to build the customized manufacturing equipment to make the car. So at the same time, each life lost was estimated by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to be worth about $200,000. So basically what Ford did is they went and they made a cost-benefit analysis, and basically this cost-benefit analysis determined that the cost of the lives lost, right? So you take the number of lives lost times that 200,000, and they decided that amount was actually less than the hundreds of millions of dollars Ford and its customers would have to pay to fix the problem. So Ford decided to do nothing about it and actually actively lobbied to prevent the government from making them do something about it. And so, in the end, this turned into a pretty big public relations fiasco. And some people might say, well, gosh, Ford wasn't really using an outcome-based ethics model to make this decision. They were really being selfish. But I think what the Ford Pinto story tells us is I think it really highlights, though, still some of the problems and some of the potential downfalls of outcome-based ethical reasoning. So what are those downfalls? So first off, as with any type of ethical reasoning, there's always going to be unintended consequences. But also, with outcome-based ethics, a lot of times we have difficulty in predicting the benefits and the harm, the different actions might have. And so, although the goal of utilitarianism and outcome-based ethics is to do the most good and the least harm, it's not always clear what action is actually going to cause the most good or the least harm. And the Ford Pinto case, I think, is a good example of that, where, is $200,000 really the right way to measure a life? Maybe not. But again, it just kind of highlights, sometimes if you're trying to make an objective decision on outcome-based ethics, it's really hard to accurately measure and predict what the different costs and benefits are going to be. Another really important downfall is that there's a tendency to place greater weight on the benefits and harm to ourselves and those close to us. And the Ford Pinto case, I think, is then a very prime example of that, where, when we try to do this outcome-based ethics, Ford looks at, here are the costs and benefits for us, and maybe downplay the costs and benefits to other people. And unfortunately, that's human nature. That's actually quite common in outcome-based ethics. So again, with outcome-based ethics, there are a lot of very positives related to it, but also some potential downfalls. So like any sort of ethical reasoning, it's useful, but not perfect.